So a couple years ago, let's say like 2021, uh, early 2022, I was really feeling the 70s vibes. Like political instability, economic crisis, kind of the vestiges of a groovy age and social change and stuff. Jimmy Carter's doing things. There's like oil stuff. The Suez Canal's in the news. I built a conversation pit basically. Everyone's just hairy and carefree. Um, and I still think that, and those are still a sort of vibe that I like, but the 80s vibes have quickly taken over in a lot of places, like all the rampant homophobia and I don't know, more social conservatism kind of spreading and growing in inequality and just systems of power that feel so massive compared to where we're at. Um, but, I'm really thinking about it. There's also like 1570s vibes going on. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that we love joking about like medieval peasants. I sure talk in those frameworks a lot. Making jokes about how a medieval peasant would eat like a nacho cheese Dorito and die, those sorts of things, which I love. I'm a big fan of that era. Grew up a big fantasy head. I read a lot of sci-fi and fantasy. That's probably not a surprise. But I think fantasy was always my go-to, and just thinking about knights and ogres and trolls, but then also the real history is interesting. But I say that there's also jokes about people having like medieval peasant brain because there's like definitely a lot of like magical thinking and like narratives and stuff just thick in the world. And I think the internet has a lot to do with that. And also just relative instability and looking for answers. And the internet, like any voice can be an authority. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I do think a lot of people online, in order to give themselves the like credibility they feel they need, they speak very authoritatively, and it makes sense that people are like that. But I don't know. I'm obviously of the mind of like things are really confusing and just all about the process and talking through them, and like I'm out here, I'm speaking, I'm spreading a lot of ideas and thoughts. But I hope that it comes across from this is just where I'm at, and there's so much unknown. So anyway, why did I get to that? Oh, but people have like medieval peasant brain, like flat earthers and stuff. Um, but also, I've heard a lot of like smart people on podcasts and in articles and in books talk about how there's a certain sort of like neo feudalism going on economically in terms of like social relations. Oops, just scared the kitty. And so that's just like how everything is to rent now, and especially like places like Portland with really intense housing markets, like more and more people are just renters, and buying a home seems further out of possibility for a lot of people, a lot of my peers. Um, and so we're just kind of like doing what the landlords tell us to do, and it's I think there's definitely something to that, and it has to do with like American capitalism and neoliberalism kind of running out of steam, and we are in this place of like liminal transitional energy of this paradigm that's been set up since the end of World War II. And so that's why things like are very trepidatious right now, and the future seems very unclear amid everything. Um, and so, yeah, we are. I'm definitely been feeling the peasant vibes in the medieval era, and I think I've fashioned myself into something of a Bryn keeper. A lot of people have heard me talk about this. My place is the Bryn Inn. Like I do love having being a safe person and having like a safe spot and lots of like fun community and fun connection and being a host. Like, I love cooking this much and I like to do it and I want to do it. And it's more fun to cook for more than yourself than just yourself. And so it's fun the way I've like crafted and shaped my life into being this Bryn keeper. And I think to further on the medieval analogy, I do think Riley was a bit of a mad wizard, and or also a druid, definitely doing like earth magic, but they like always were just, their head was in the sky and they were really thinking hard and deeply and always down to tinker and fiddle. Like, they loved tools, they loved experimentation and creativity and creating things. Like, they're a master ceramicist. And I also think that recreational drug use is a lot more alchemy than science. And that's not to fully say it's awful, but unfortunately, like, I've just been thinking about this lately, that Riley was definitely like using drugs to self-medicate in various ways, and I think they also were like kind of good at it in a backwards way. I mean, at least from like being pretty nonchalant about it and being able to hide maybe their more severe symptoms. But anyway, drug use is alchemy. And if you're just making like fun little potions and fun little seltzers and flavors, alchemy away. Do little rituals, do little magics. Like, I do think that Riley's like wizardry brought a lot of good things in the world, and because they were so charismatic and impactful and kind, like, how can you not feel powerful? How can you not feel like the magic in your fingertips, with all the like awesomeness of them? And so I do think that bred something of like a confidence and a recklessness, and definitely that adds up with their drug use too, and causes or effects from that. And also, I think their mental health and mental state and neurotype. But yeah, so the Mad Wizard and doing some alchemy, and Riley like was messing around with some intense reagents. And I think about this a lot too. I'm a chemistry tech. I work in a lab. Like, I handle hydrofluoric acid, which is a very intense acid that if you get like a little on yourself of the concentrated stuff, you will die. And it's funny, as someone with like health anxiety, it does freak me out, but also I'm like following procedure. I'm being very safe when I use it, and it's just kind of normal to me. But it's interesting because Riley was also fiddling around with intense, deathly reagents, and yeah, it's weird. It's an interesting thing about my job right now, because yeah, they certainly practice like risk reduction and harm management, harm reduction, but obviously not properly, the night that they died. But I also know that it was something that they were informed about and, yeah, cared about. But unfortunately, like, the power of their mad wizardry, they they connected to the conduit of the earth, and I think it was too much. That's kind of the way that I think about it. Yeah, this turned out to be 10 minutes. I thought it was going to be a couple. Oops.